This Sunday. Every Sunday, side by side at the microphone, from the green light to the speed trap, Chris Switzer and Ray Garino calls them as they sees them, and you better believe them. Here, relevant news, biased opinions, and outright bullshit regarding every aspect of automotive culture. Gasp at mechanical trickery never before revealed over FCC-regulated airwaves. Thrill to the explosive tension as Chris and Ray cuss each other down the track and barrel roll across the finish line, laughing at certain disaster as they shake hands for the devil. All that and much more this Sunday at high noon on the Motormouth Radio Hour. Call in and speak live with the Wizards of Speed and live feed, Chris Switzer and Ray Garino. Bring the whole family. Kids under 12 get in free. Every Sunday at noon on WHPC. Take the Long Island Expressway to the Meadowbrook Parkway and look for the sign saying no parking on the expressway and no express service on the parkway. Go right on Highway 24 to Garden City. $2 all-day parking includes pit pass. Sunday!
Whose motorcycle is this?
It's a chopper, baby.
Whose chopper is this?
Zed's.
Who's Zed?
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
Yeah, Zed may be dead, but you know what? We're not. Long Island's only automotive talk show right here in the studio on the island, Motormouth Radio. Your hosts, Ray Guarino, Chris Switzer. We're here to entertain and bring you the latest in automotive information. Chris, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you agree? Yes.
That is what we're here, either that or just to make total fools of ourselves. One of the total fools of ourselves automotively.
We've done that before. And today we do have a special guest. We have Mr. Carl Anthony from Automoblog, that you can't say, coming in.
You mean Automoblog? Yes.
Yes. Carl Anthony will be with us in a very short while, and we'll be talking about a lot of great and interesting things that I know Carl has slated for us.
Yes.
So, yeah, you can call. You can talk to Carl because he's going to be in virtually. The number is 516-572-7440. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out some of our new friends, like our buddy Tony. I'm not sure what town Tony is from, but Corvette Tony, 57 Tony. You know, cool as a smoothie Tony, a new friend of ours. And we went to an event last night, Chris. The wife and I went to the Corvette Society's Pizza Bash. It was that kind of the club kind of get together. Clubs have done that through the years, and they'll take some treasury money and throw a little bash for the for the membership.
Sounds like a plan.
So Stan Rivera, great guy, president of the club, El Presidente, as we call him,
He's the one with the big hat.
He sometimes has a big hat, yes.
Uh-huh.
Stan hosted the event. We had a great time. Saw Tony there. Saw another guy. Got to meet another guy. Went with my friend Rick, Lieutenant Rick, but met another guy named Rick. And I swear, when he rolled in, Tony says, "Oh, here's Rick." I said, "What's he driving, a Rambler?" This two-door black sedanish roof-style car that looked like a Rambler.
Okay.
It was not. It's a Studebaker.
Oh.
I didn't look at what year it was. It's got to be 60-something. It's a Studebaker Daytona.
Right. So it's a lark.
Okay, yeah, it could have been. He could have found it on a lark. Yeah, I know it was kind of a chance thing, but
no, the car's called the lark. The Daytona is would be the designation, the model designation of a lark. It's probably somewhere in the realm of 1962, 63, 64.
Okay. So cool car. It's a Restomart. He bought it from actually the president of the Studebaker Club in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. So we know he's got something on the ball then. Yeah.
And,
nice.
and as we were kind of picking it apart, I said to him, you are lucky because all this trim on the side, the stainless under
was
the
all there?
C-pillar, everything was there. I said, probably because he was the president of the club, was he able to get... I said, if you need any of this in the future, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely have to join about 3 or 4 more Studebaker clubs in order to find all that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, so I asked him. He was a little perturbed because he said his car was puking coolant, and we look over. Tony and I look over, and it was like dripping a little. He said, "That's not puking coolant. Puking coolant is like blah."
Right.
Blah.
That's more like dribbling.
Yeah, I said,
that's a social disease.
He says, "Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure." So I said, well, what motor's in the car? I didn't even remember what the hell they came with. Back in the day, I don't know.
Basically, 6 bangers. There were Chevy 6s, and at the time, I don't know if the 8 was still available. I think the 280 what was it, the 283, I think was the smallest 8 was available in those cars for a certain amount of time, but mostly it was the 6.
Yeah.
Whatever. What was the cube on the 6? 250?
Something like, well, the Chevy 6 was 230 or 250, yeah. 194, right. 230, 250. Well, this has a transplanted Chevy 383, a 350 stroker, small block.
Oh, nice.
And as soon as we walked over and looked, I said, well, let me take a look. He opens the hood, and I said, oh, my God. I said, here's a guy. I said, I've been looking for you. I said, you're like a doppelganger. I said, another man after my own heart. Well,
he painted the engine black.
The whole thing.
Oh, for crying out
loud. The
loud.
motor was black. The valve covers were black. The intake, the air cleaner was black. I'm like, yeah. I said, you know what? I said, you're not going to leave. We got to walk over to my car. I said, I got to show you.
So you can both talk about stuff that I don't agree with.
Yeah, what I've been catching hell for years. I said, you got to see it. So it ends up, well, he did build the motor, so that really wasn't his choice. It was the last guy's
so he
choice.
could change it.
But his was even blacker than mine. When I looked at my car,
that's pretty black.
Yes, and when I looked at my car in retrospect, I had more bright things than he did. Even
wow.
But still, I said this is just too wild to be true. And
now, mind you, we don't pre-record this. This isn't like we don't discuss. We discuss stuff before the show, but you always kind of like surprise me with things,
right?
And we didn't talk about this, so I had no knowledge of your commonality with this individual. So just letting you know.
And that's what I told him. I said, wait till my co-host Chris hears about this tomorrow. I said, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow. I said, because he's not going to believe it. He's the biggest detractor of what I did anyway. So just conversation. So we're trying to help him out. He had a little bit of a cooling issue, and I don't think it's bad. He had a one of those solid style caps on the radiator where I told him you need one of those. I showed him. I said a vented cap like mine where you can vent. I said put a 16-pound cap on here. I said if the motor is healthy, I said I think you'll be fine. I really do.
Shot of penicillin, he'll be done.
Yeah. So he was also working through some issues. He's got the hardest clutch in the world, which I thought I owned years ago in this same car that I have now.
For you to say that, it's got to be a thigh buster.
Oh, unbelievable.
Calf buster.
So we got to talking about the intricacies of clutch technology and Z-bar. And I explained to him how I had all those troubles years past, but now when I put the car back together, I actually used a laser and made sure the angles of the arms of the Z-bar were where they were supposed to be. I didn't know they were supposed to be anywhere. You throw it in, right? No, but there is a prescribed, place in space that they should be.
Just out of curiosity, you installed your 4-speed in your vehicle. It came with an automatic originally.
Yes.
When you looked at the firewall to tack that pedal, wasn't there like 2 dimples on the firewall where something like that would be?
No. The pedals on the GMA body, they hang off a pedal box that's above, and they hang down from that on a common shaft. So they're in the box.
There's nothing that attaches physically welds to the firewall.
The pedal box would, but that was already there. That's already there. You just add the clutch pedal and away you go.
Oh, so it's the angle is already predetermined at that point.
Well, that part, yeah. What I did have to do was for the Z-bar, there's they call that a cross shaft. There's a ball that goes in either end to let it pivot, and one ball threads into a hole on the engine block in the rear. Okay. And directly across from there, there's a tab that gets welded onto the chassis that looks like a little V or a peace sign or fork.
I like where your fingers are. That's yes.
And the ball that goes on that side has 2 flat ends on the threaded shaft. So those flat ends fit into that V shaft, and you put a nut on the back. So that could be off.
Certainly do.
That could be. You know what? Something else could be off. So let's see. Let's go to the phones and see what we have here when we say hi, nice. Caller. You're on with the Motor Mouse.
Water after that.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, it's Pizza Ron.
Hey, Pizza Ron, what's going on?
How you doing, Pizza Ron?
I'm doing good. Hey, coming back from a car show down in Millville, New Jersey. We went to the Shelby American show.
Uh-huh.
Cars were great. Pizza sucked.
Oh, really? Well, yeah. And I'm surprised. New Jersey usually has some pretty good pizza.
That's what I thought. No, Southern New Jersey, hard. The diner was good. Pizza was terrible.
Wow. I was at a pizza event last night in Hicksville, And it was I always think of Felix Pappalardi when I hear the name. It was Pappalardo's. That was the name of the place.
Okay.
Pretty good. Pretty good, I got to say. So
I hit the island. I have to go. Usually Hicksville, it's Ramos for me.
That's good. Yeah.
So anyway, but I just figured I'd give you a pizza update. But the Shelby American show was really good.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Ron. That's thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. So long.
Take care, Ron.
That's long distance, Ron, from Clinton, New York. In fact.
Yes. I actually just recently had pizza in a place that I usually don't have pizza in, and it was so doughy, I called it 3 a.m. pizza.
Oh, yeah.
You know that type
Oh, yeah. That's when
pizza, you need a slice after what you've been doing up until 3 a.m.
You would eat the box it came in if you missed or didn't know or was right. I got you.
Yeah, standing around with a bunch of knuckleheads,
right,
in line.
Exactly.
Barely able to order because you're slurring your words.
Yeah.
And just throwing pizza at you.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
So,
that's cool.
So anyway, to get back before Carl comes in.
Your clutch. Your
yeah,
clutch,
so the Z-bar does have some adjustments, and of course from the factory that bracket is welded on the assembly line. So, I had to put mine in, so it was always in suspect. And then we talked about how the transmission, he's got the same Tremec 5-speed that I have.
Oh, okay.
And I said to him, with a non-hydraulic, with a standard throwout bearing, not a hydraulic throwout bearing. I said, the other thing that I knew, that I learned right away, was the transmission needs to be installed with the end of that input shaft dead nut center to the pilot bearing on the back of the crankshaft. And if it's off at all, it'll work.
Prematurely wear.
It will. It'll work. It'll run, but you will have troubles. And I heard there was some clutch troubles. And he says, yes. He goes, I read those instructions because they had the installation book and there was an instruction book. He goes, I read them both. He goes, and they said that. He goes, did you read that? I'm like, I absolutely did. I said, and he goes, well, what did you do? I said, well, I set mine up and I used a dial indicator as they indicated. You put the bell housing on the engine and you mount the dial indicator so it touches the crank. Actually, you want the dial indicator to be on the bell housing hole, and you turn the motor, and basically you want to make sure that you get, I think they said less than 5,000ths run out. And I had from 0 to 3. So I was within spec.
So run out meaning?
Out of concentricity, the circle.
Out of concentricity,
right?
Yes,
because you have the dial indicator on the circle, and as it's turning, the dial indicator is reading high and low spots. That's
Got it.
The reg. So the way to solve it is if you're out more than 5,000ths, they sell offset dowels that you put. Now you take the dowels out of the engine block, put these dowels in that can be turned and can shift the bell housing. In space, up, down, right, or left. Racers have been doing this for years because they know they like to get stuff perfect.
Sure. And within balance, because anything that's out of balance is going to probably rob you of horsepower and prematurely wear some bearings.
And maybe blow up your transmission when you least expect.
Blow up your transmission.
So I was lucky I didn't need to do that because mine was in spec. So again, he doesn't know if that was ever done to that car. I said, I hate to say it, but I think really this transmission has to come out. You got to see what clutch is in there. If it was set up right, you got to kind of re-engineer what the last guy did.
Right.
If you want to drive comfortably, because
which is the most frustrating thing to me when it comes down to building a vehicle that you purchase. A vehicle that someone else had built. There's no book. There's no shop manual. There's no stock spec. You're going with whatever the previous owner did, and that to me makes me crazy.
It does, and truthfully, I've talked about this. Working on cars at the shop, it's the same thing. I don't know what the last guy did to this car, but now I have to work on it. The Olds is at the shop right now. Case in point, I kind of know more about that car. I told you, as soon as I know it's been laid up for over 25 years in a garage. As soon as we got to the shop and I put it on the lift, I saw the 2 blown out mufflers, and I said, exhaust valves. I know, because my Riviera blew the exhaust valves and blew the mufflers up like crazy. So, but I wasn't sure, didn't know. So now I got the car running. and it ran, and it did have a popping out of the right side. I said, that's supporting the exhaust valve issue.
Right.
This week, what I did do is I ran a scope down the intake and a scope down the cylinders, and I did a compression test. Compression test was fine, 165 to 175 across the board, healthy.
That's nice. That's half the battle.
But when I scoped the cylinders, all the cylinders on the left bank, 1357, the left side of the engine, the driver's side, were dry. They were nice, and the pistons looked good. All of the cylinders on the other bank, 2, 4, 6, and 8, had wet spots on them.
Oh.
Leaky valves. So now I'm getting a step closer to being sure about saying, yes, we have a valve issue here.
So you can rebuild the heads on this.
I actually sent I texted the owner and I asked him, I said, hey, Ed, I said, and Ed may be listening too, I don't know. I said, Ed, were these heads ever converted to hardened valve seats for, to run unleaded gas? And he said, no.
Said no.
No, I just used to run a half a tank each. I'm like, okay, so now we have antiquated heads with softer seats, old guides, and the valves. And I said, my recommendation is these heads. Well, I want to get that intake off and put it on a streetable intake, which I found. Bobby Jones from the Olds Club has a used Performer that he's willing to sell at a decent price.
What intake is on that now?
A Torker. Which is, that's the big old street. That's the street mamba, man. That was the hot.
Oh, my gosh.
Dougie's shaking his head right now. He's like, oh, yeah, man, the Torker is cool. Torker is cool. If you're going like 3,500 and up, that was the high end. So I said, that's got to come off anyway. I'm taking the headers off already. I know we're putting exhaust manifolds on. Now the next step is I feel good saying, let's take those heads off, send them out.
Right.
Unfortunately for him, it's going to be more money than if it was just a refresh, because he does need to have they're going to put in better bronze guides, and they're going to change the seats, which is it's a bunch of labor, and then assess the valves and change them with either sodium filled or stainless steel, whatever is whatever they have. So it's going to be a bigger bill than expected, but
I'm sure
in the end you're going to have a car that's going to be turnkey, excellent, kind of like this image just popped up on the screen. That turnkey, excellent image. Who's not paying attention to us at all.
No, he's not. He's having technical difficulties, I think.
Mr. Carl Anthony. So as soon as he's ready, he'll pop in.
Right, as soon as Carl pops in. Right. Let's see. Does he have sound?
Yes, I have sound.
Okay.
And I don't know what the deal was, but technical difficulties solved. I plugged in one thing, unplugged another. Don't ask me what I did. It was a wild guess. It worked. Here we are, fellas.
Okay, Carl.
We just watched you getting shocked there for a second.
Carl has just revealed to everybody the secret to how we do this radio show.
Right.
If it doesn't work, we unplug something, plug something back in. How many times has that happened to us, right?
Yeah.
Or just screw with it.
Luckily it didn't come to the duct tape and the needle nose pliers, but it was about to.
Right. Yeah, when we see the flame wrench come out, we know it's getting serious.
Oh yeah, it's you gotta wave the smoke away. You're in trouble.
So Carl,
sorry, I'm a few minutes late.
That's all right. Great to have you on with us again. It's always a pleasure. We know, we love to.
Carl, you always make our program very easy. That's what I've always said.
What was it? 510% better or something?
512% better.
That's very official. Anthony. That's very official.
Yeah, well, we got to do something official around here.
Yeah, right. And the unofficialness that goes on a regular basis. Right. Carl, I've been reading your article, and I'm amazed. First of all, I'm amazed that you had Ray review it as well. You had Ray's input in it. But I am loving the 2024 Haggerty study, finding Gen Z lovers gravitating towards collector cars. I think this is something that near and dear to my heart as well. I actually was talking to an individual last night who has to be in his early 30s.
Okay.
And has just recently purchased a Model T.
Oh wow!
Yes, and it's funny because he's into it, big time into it. He sounds like an old man when mind you, he's still in his early 30s. But he said he bought a Model T. He bought a 23, and he's going to fix that one up so he can start trading it down. He's looking for either a 16 or a 14.
Oh,
He
wow.
says, those are the ones he really wants.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I says, oh, you got the 3 pedals, and he's like, he's looking at me like we're talking like dolphins. Like he's like, oh, you know about the 3 pedals? I'm like, yeah, it's, you got reverse and brake is like the same pedal. We're going back and forth. But it was just astonishing that there is life, there is hope. In these little tiny pockets of people where some of them are becoming real collectors. But reading your article, I mean, I love Ray's input. It was dynamic, which made me openly weep.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Ray. And what the premise is that earlier this week, Hagerty came out with their 2024 Future of Driving survey. They surveyed 2,000 Americans across the United States to try to determine the role that cars play and their sentiments and their behaviors. And some of the things that they found in that survey, once they crunched all the numbers, were that 77% of Gen Z said that they either loved or they liked driving, that Gen Z and millennials both have either owned or currently own a classic car, that there is an emotional connection to driving. So Gen Z will describe driving as making them feel free or adventurous or calm. There's even a section of, there's even a group of millennials in that generational cohort that like DIY maintenance. And so this tends to push back a little bit on the thought that Gen Z is not interested in cars or they're not interested in driving. Hagerty's 2024 Future of Driving study. The article that I wrote is on automoblog.com now. It's the very first article you see when you go there.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm reading now.
Yeah, it's a breakdown of the survey, and I messaged Ray. I think, Ray, what did we email Tuesday or Wednesday? And I said, I've got to get you some quotes. So Ray does just a fantastic job providing some quotes and some additional perspective, especially about the DIY maintenance and about his daughter who's in that generational cohort. And so it's just this type of stuff is, like you said, Chris, there is life out there. Younger generations are interested in cars, and that's what this Hagerty survey uncovers.
I have to say, Carl, I think it was kind of like whenever you ask me to do stuff like this, it harkens me back to Scotty Gosson, the guy who does our opening song. Scotty has a band, and he was a journalist out of Oregon. Worked and wrote for everybody, and until he got sick and he couldn't do it anymore. But he had me writing for his blog, which was a daily blog, and he would send me an assignment. He used to call me Jimmy Olsen, and I called him Perry White. It was like cub reporter kid. Kid, I need this. Can you do this? Can you get this for me by Friday? And it was always like, oh my God! And I knew that his level of detail and the stuff he put into his writing was phenomenally obsessive. And I always felt, as soon as I said yes, like, what did I say yes for? I shouldn't say yes. And I was so under the gun, and the safe was over my head. But it made me push and get it done. And I think some of my best work was done that way. And even with you, the same thing. It was early in the week, and you said, can you get this to me by Friday? I was like, oh, here we go again. And there's a couple days where I wasn't around. I haven't been really spending time by the computer. I actually sat one day and just said, let me just slog this before the Plane and Traffic show, which I find out you're going to be on this week, by the way.
Yes, I will be. I will be.
Oh, boy.
Great.
Good luck.
I sat down in the late afternoon and kind of slogged it all out and given the article to my daughter and said, do me a favor, read this. And any comments are appreciated. And she came up with a gem. Like, Jesus, where'd you get that from, kid? So, yeah, it was, I think, because the way we ask you to come on the show is like, hey, Carl, we're going to be live 10 minutes. What are you doing? Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
It's funny because I have, and Ray would appreciate this. I have a 10-year-old now, and she's in that Porsche stage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mine
Ray
was
knows,
too.
Ray knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good, because I think, Ray, both of your daughters went through like a Porsche stage around the same age.
Also a Gotti stage with when they were on TV.
Please,
let's not get into that. My most famous quote came out of that.
Oh, yeah. I watched Ray suck a word back into his mouth that shouldn't have gone out.
It was an F-bomb. And I tell you, as it started coming out, it came back in, and I saved it.
I never saw anybody do that before or since. Been in this business a long time. I never saw anybody suck a word back into his mouth.
Oh man. I have that clip. That's a good clip. That's
but that it's true, and it seems that I love the fact that these kids are into the business. They want into the cars, but I'm not sure if they know what it entails. The work that goes into keeping these cars on the road, and what happens when you actually drive them, the complete lack of technology that they are so used to that now they are going to endure. I'm having a problem with my Chrysler. I mean, because I'm so used to like backup beepers and backup cameras and I'm getting used to that. Now I get in the Chrysler and I feel like I'm in a canoe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like wait a minute, where's the little thermometer on my dashboard? Why can't I tell what the temperature is outside? Yeah. It's like this, so I'm starting to get I'm feeling it, as well as I'm sure they're overwhelmed by the lack of technology. So
and I think that in the article, and Ray, this is where I was really glad to have your perspective on it, because there is a section that Haggerty Future Driving Study found that millennials, most people go to the dealership or to a service center, and that finding is to be expected. But there is a little over 30% of millennials in the survey that raised their hand and said, I like to do DIY repairs. Mm-hmm. And so these younger generations who are getting into this, Ray, you did a really good job in this article laying out the fact that if you want to learn more, you can take night classes at a community college. The Board of Cooperative Educational Services, which is the shared educational programs to school districts in the home state of New York, like looking into similar programs in your state, that if you want to get more, joining up with a car club. So, Ray, I really liked that aspect. And so in your quotes that you gave me, I elaborated on that to say that, in effect, to say that if you are a young person in this hobby, that there are plenty of resources for you. That, yes, you may get into an old car and it may, not having power steering or not having, the radar sensors for the blind spot monitoring and things we take for granted.
Not having ABS brakes.
Yeah, having ABS brakes. That's ubiquitous today, that every car has them.
Sure.
But that if you want to get better and you really want to enhance your skills and get into the hobby, that there are ways to do it. And then, Ray, you said joining a car club. That's one of the best ways. So I have your quote in there about that instructors come into car clubs and they're happy to share that knowledge with younger people.
I went to an event yesterday with a Corvette club, and they've done things like this. Now I've worked with a lot of younger guys. The other way is it's learned knowledge through the family. So I've worked with a good amount of younger guys who had told me, well, yeah, I worked with my uncle or my dad or my grandfather. Yep. I said, okay, so let's do this. And I found out, like, well, where did you learn how to do that? Why are you doing that way? Actually, case in point, they were gapping spark plugs with a feeler gauge. Well, my dad showed me how. I said, you know what, your dad's wrong. I said, sorry, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the right way to do it. There's a gapping tool, and I showed, here's all the gapping tools I have, and this is I said, not that won't work. It'll work, but if you want to do it the correct way, as prescribed, you do it with one of these. So sometimes just because someone has knowledge, it doesn't mean it's right. But that's where a lot of people get their stuff from. Again, like I said, we just try to pay that forward. To back up half a step, we're talking about driving an older car. I had my Pontiac out last night. We went to two events. I had my wife with me. We went to the Corvette pizza event, and on the way back, I said, some of the guys stopped at the food truck on the highway. We got to go and stop. I want dessert, and it's the rolling joint food truck. And I got this cake roll. I'll be posting a picture of it. You'll see it, and it's to die for. But when I drive that car, the one thing, and I don't mind, I go right back into the 65 realm, crank windows, it's a manual transmission. It's a resto mod, so it's nicer to drive. But the one thing that gets me, and it got me last week, was if it rains and I got to use the wipers, I got to reach down low on the dash to turn the knob to swipe the wipers. I like that the stalk switch so much better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beaten by technology.
So that's the one thing that I wish, if I could change something, I would change. But I'm not putting a late model column in the car, so that's not going to happen.
You got to deal with it.
Yeah.
But
that's for sure.
That's part of the love of driving too.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's a long road trip or you're just locally to some car shows and going out to have coffee or going to a food truck, like that also counts as the love of driving. And you go back to this survey where if Gen Zs, just like us, you're working a full-time job, however many hours a week, and you've got all kinds of extracurricular activities, you have family commitments, and then you get to a Saturday night and there's a car show, or you want to go out to the movies or coffee, or you want to take a drive, or in the case where I grew up, you want to go to the county fair, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's all part of the love of driving. Let's just get out, get away from our screens, get on the road. Yeah. And I think one of the best things to happen to the whole collector car movement is this idea that, look, McLarens are going to cross the block and they're going to warrant millions of dollars and record-setting Ferraris and Shelby Mustangs and Camaros. And it's like, yes, that's cool. That's awesome. Those pictures are great to post on social media. But the best thing to come out of this hobby is to go for cars that mean something to you from your youth. I've said this on this show many times. Yes. For me, it's a 2005 Ford Ranger FX4 Level 2 with a 4-liter V6, because that was my very first truck when I graduated college and I had my very first full-time job. I had a truck fund for Nerf bars and for tonneau covers and all of that
CB
stuff.
lights.
And yeah. And it's like, 100 Mustangs, 100 Shelby Mustangs could go ahead of me and I'd be like, yeah, that's really cool. And I love those cars. But what I really want is that sterling gray Ford Ranger from 2005. The best thing to happen to this hobby is that people are going after the cars that mean something to them. And that is also being embraced by the hobby. So if I come in and I say, I want a first generation, in the case of this Hagerty study, I want a SUV that I grew up with because my dad drove a Dodge Durango, or because my mom and dad had a first generation Ford Explorer in the early 90s. The hobby is embracing that. And instead of saying, well, that doesn't count as a collector car because it's not a performance or a muscle car. It's nice to see the embracing of the hobby, to say that all vehicles and all tastes are welcome. And I think that's why you see the diversity amongst Gen Z, because the Hagerty study, this 2024 Future of Driving study, broke all that down. And Gen Zs show an interest, obviously, in SUVs because they would have grown up in that generation, but they show an interest in trucks. They show an interest in sedans. They show an interest even in luxury cars. So the hobby is really all-encompassing. I think that's one of the best things that's ever happened, or one of the best things that could happen to this hobby, is that it's all-encompassing like that.
What's also all-encompassing is the fact that we're at the bottom of the hour and we need to take a break. So I'm going to take the liberty and do that right now and tell you that our WHPC weather forecast, which is powered by Pantano's Gourmet, with locations in Hewlett and Uniondale, is sponsoring this. The weather today is absolutely, honestly gorgeous. Sunny skies. They say it's going to be overcast at late in the afternoon. It's in the 80s. It's a gorgeous top-down day. Tonight, cloudy with showers after midnight, low around 70. I'll be sleeping by then, but I'll wake up and look out the window. Who cares? And Sundays at 8 a.m. before us, there's a show, Chris and Carl, that is phenomenal. The man does a great job, and it's called Jewish Talk. Sundays at 8 a.m., Rabbi Pearl, he thinks in Jewish but speaks in English, and they are right. He has a great way to get the word out to people. He's, of course, featuring talk about the issues that affect the Jewish community, but the things that affect people. He's a real people person. Great man. He has a lot to say. You should listen to him. Do we have anything to listen? Now, on the other hand, we have Chris in the Honor Group of the Hour. Do we have anything that you have to tell us that we should
of course
listen or not listen?
Of course I do. Okay. Just want to let you know that Jim texted us at 203-670-4127. He said the automobile represents the greatest expression of individual liberty. So yes. Jim is on board with that as well.
Yeah.
And also, after the break, I would love to ask Carl, as far as what started this Gen Z resurgence of classic cars.
Got it.
But first, let's take a look at the Motormouth Radio Honor Group of the Hour. If you lent a car part to a friend or neighbor that is still on their car, does one of your buddies have a carburetor they borrowed from you that you eventually want back? Do you have a set of rims that were given to a friend to use while he saves up for a new set? Have you ever made the statement, if you sell this car, I want my valve covers back before you do? So if some of your assorted car parts are keeping your friends and neighbors' cars temporarily running, then you are part of the Motormouth Radio on the Group of the Hour, Ray. Because I know right. You have.
I lent a distributor to a guy up the block at one of the shops that he said, I just need it for a day to see this. Well, I haven't gotten it back yet. I want my freaking distributor back, Thank you. I'm going to go find out this week what's going on. All right. Let's take a break. We'll make it really short. We won't do we'll make it a very short group. So we want to get Carl back on. We'll be back in a second on with more Motormouth Radio. Ray Guarino, Chris Switzer, and Carl Anthony on 90.3 WHPC. Keep it where you got it.
My name is Carl Anthony with Automoblog and AutoVision News, and you're listening to Ray and Chris on Motormouth Radio, WHPC 90.3 FM.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by CarStar Celebrity Chase Collision, with 2 locations in Limerick and Oceanside, who remind you that New York State law says you always have the right to choose which shop will fix your car. CarStar Celebrity Chase Collision offers a full range of services, 24-hour towing between Montauk and Manhattan, shuttle service, and they can help you with a rental car arrangement if needed. All repairs include the CarStar Lifetime Nationwide Warranty, ensuring that the experts at Celebrity Chase Collision are always on your side.
Y sí, hablamos español.
More information is available at 516-593-0920 or online at celebritychasecollision.com.
Hey you, get over here. Every Sunday, 12 to 1, you are going to tune in to hear the Motor Mouths, my friends Ray Guarino and Chris Switzer. 90.3 FM, WHPC. You might learn something.
Yeah, we hope you learned something. Actually, we hope we learned something, too, because it goes both ways on this show. So let's surf on into the second half of this show with that gnarly sax. Oh, man. I was getting into some cool music this week. That's a topic for another story. So, Carl, back to you. You got the floor. What's on your mind?
Yeah, what turned on the Gen Zers to classic cars?
So it's a really good question, and Haggerty's future driving study went into this. There's sort of several things that seem to be happening all at once. And first is social media. So whether that's Instagram and YouTube are cited as the 2 biggest influences, but the idea is that if Gen Z is online and they have their phone, and this really goes for any generation because I'm an elder millennial, was born in 1981, so that's elder millennial for me, but there are plenty of opportunities to discover automotive content through YouTube, through Instagram, through any number of social media platforms. And of course, Gen Z has gravitated towards those types of social media platforms for automotive content. Once they see that content and once they're exposed to it, then from there, they try to go out and actually find it in person. So that's one of the key connections here is that, yes, they may consume it on a platform like YouTube, but they are keen to get out and go to a car show. They are keen to get out and go to an auto show if they have one, locally. So, for example, it doesn't have to be a big, like a Chicago auto show or Detroit auto show. It doesn't have to be a big one like that. But any car show that may be locally in their city that happens annually. Maybe they're going with friends. Maybe they're going with a family member. Maybe they're going with a dad, with an uncle, with grandma and grandpa, right? But the point is that they're getting out and actually seeing these cars, whether it's a huge auto show or it's a cars and coffee at a local coffee shop. So you've got that happening. You've got the on-screen exposure, if you will, and then you've got the in-person exposure. And then further to that is the same stuff that would have likely inspired us. So we go back to film and television and some of those more established mediums. So for baby boomers, it's a movie like American Graffiti. For somebody who grew up in my generation, it might be something like Fast and Furious. For somebody else, it might be James Bond and his Aston Martins. It might be Randall Memphis Reigns, and you're talking Nicolas Cage and Gone in 60 Seconds, which was the remake in 2000.
Watch the original.
Yeah, So that type of stuff resonates with every generation at some point. So film plays a huge role too. So just to give you an example, last week, I was out in Sioux Falls back visiting family. So Danielle, my wife Danielle, and my mother and my brother, so Alex Hartman. Alex and I worked together on Automoblog. So all of us went to the West Mall 7, which is a theater that's in Sioux Falls. If you live in Sioux Falls, everybody knows the West Mall. But we went out to the theater to see Twisters, the remake of the 1996 film. And most people who are into Dodge trucks or Ram trucks will remember in 1996 that Bill Paxton drove a red Ram 1500, and that was in the prime of the new Dodge advertising era, where when you would watch on TV, every single Dodge would be red, and they would come out with the Viper, and then the Dodge, the little snake, would come out with it, and the Intrepid and the Stratus and the Caravan, and all the vehicles were red. And watching Twisters, this 2024 remake, one of the characters, the Tornado Wrangler, is driving a Ram 3500 with a Cummins. He's driving a dually. One of the characters is driving a Ram TRX. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm listening for the supercharger of the 6.2 Hemi and the Ram TRX. As they're going through the fields and they're bouncing up and down and chasing the tornado, I'm like, I bet that Ram TRX, I bet that suspension is in Baja mode, So that type of stuff is, if I'm into Ram trucks, I may have at my age, say I'm 42, I'll be 43 this year. I like Ram trucks just in general, but I can go back to 1996 and watching Twister in 1996 in the theater back in rural Iowa. And because a tornado had actually come through our neighborhood 2 summers prior. So we were very keen to see the movie Twister when you grow up in that part of the world, right? And I remember in Twister and Bill Paxton, the red Ram truck, and driving through the house, when the house rolls on the highway and stuff, and thinking that was just the coolest thing. And then now here, all these years later, almost 30 years later, I'm watching the remake of Twisters, watching the reimagining of it, going, wow, I really love Ram trucks. I'm sitting in the theater at West Mall 7 in Sioux Falls. My brother and I are looking across at each other being like, yep, that's the supercharger there for that 6.2 Hemi, right? So there are so to get Gen Z into the hobby is probably the same way we came in, through film, through television, through firsthand exposure of auto shows or car shows or grandma and grandpa or mom and dad, right? And then unique to Gen Z then would be the social media aspect, right? Where they're getting it on YouTube and Instagram that maybe we didn't necessarily have so much back in the day, but we benefit from now because we all have phones. So that's kind of how they're coming into the hobby and then sustaining it and then saying from there, yes, I want to own a classic car or a collector car.
I have a thought about this. You just took me back. When you're talking about how your involvement with these things, I'm thinking, what was my involvement? So, okay, when I was a young kid, all we had was TV. We had movies, certainly, there were movies, but we had TV. I know the guys before me, coming up through the 50s and the 60s, they just got out and worked on their cars. They just got out and built them and damned to be.
It's what everybody did.
Now, I saw Tony's Corvette yesterday, which is a 57, and it's painted beautiful. It's like an aqua colored green and with white coves and a white and green interior. And the first thing I think, and it's set up with lower suspension. It's a driver, beautiful car. But the first thing I think of when I see that car is seeing Hot Rods to Hell on Channel 7 at midnight, back in 1968 or 70, 71, 72. That was my involvement. And, it's so different. So I wonder, I almost want to say, selfishly, correct me if you think I'm wrong, I may be, that I think back then we had no other choice but to get out and work on the car and build the car and just do something with the cars. They weren't really in the movies yet as they are now. So now the Gen Zs go forward. They have all of that stuff that came before them, plus now all the remakes of the movies that are there. And they can, and even yourself, Carl, you have that personal interaction. So I wonder, and just to put it out there, I wonder how that shaped all of our different age range groups moving forward. We're all still doing the same thing and still involved in it, maybe to different levels, maybe some to more and some less. But I think there's been a parity that's been established. And going forward, as long as I'm alive, I want to keep my eyes and ears on this because I'm very curious. You always think, like, I know a lot of the younger guys that I've mentored and helped along, they didn't come up with dirt under their fingernails, and they weren't, they didn't have 90 weight in their hair, when they were in middle school. I did. So you kind of tend to want to own it because you lived it.
You should wash your hair once or twice. Get that stuff out.
I should. But, so I wonder if the buy-in is not as deliberate, to pick a word, if it's still going to be as long-lasting. Now I'm driving the car that I heard about a guy last night who owns a 64 GTO. He bought it brand new. He's here on the island. And he couldn't get delivery because it was damaged in transit. The one they had in the dealership, they wouldn't give him because it was going to the World's Fair. So he still has the car. He's 86 or 88 years old. And I told the guy last night, I said, usually in the Pontiac groups, I'm the guy that has the car the longest. I'm usually the guy because I've had mine since 1975. I said, so I usually get that honor. I have to, I have to belay it to him.
Yes, the torch.
I said, but that's okay. That's fine. He's an original owner. That's great.
But just to add to that, I always think about when we were kids, those cars were just old cars. They were just used old cars. That's all they were. Yeah. There were no classics by all means. The classics were Duesenbergs and Packards.
Right.
There were no classic Pontiacs at the time. But I think now, what is taking over with Gen Z is the fact that a lot of the people they relate to on television, like you say, a lot of singing stars, a lot of actors, all seem to own classic cars as well.
Yeah.
Like it used to be at the time, just Jay Leno and Jerry Seinfeld owned classic cars.
Right.
Now there's a boatload. Now rap stars, now rockers, now
Hart
country
is
people.
A big one.
Yeah, Kevin Hart's
at SEMA.
Right. That's true.
Right. Dee Snider is a big one.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them that now own classic cars. So when kids see that, I think that is like an open door to, hey, I want one too. They have one. You
know what? But it kind of ties into something I wrote to Carl in my replies. It's all good and fun, horse around with your friends until someone punches you in the nose. Mm-hmm. You take a shot in the nose and you're like, wait a minute. It's all good and fun, well and good until you pull an engine. You come in dirtier than hell, and then you realize that you can't clean this off to go to work or school tomorrow. It's there. That's where a lot of guys back off and say, "Oh, that's not for me," and that's okay. That is okay. I'm just saying, in the earlier days, even the guys that preceded us, you had to do that to have a car on the road. I had to know how to work on a car to get my first car, or else I wasn't driving.
Right.
So good for them. The buy-in is easier. You can buy a car but when you do have to repair it, and when something breaks on the road, all right, we all have Haggerty. We call them, we pick me up, but I've made plenty of roadside repairs. Is that knowledge base going to be there? So you know what? Maybe the hobby's going to change. Maybe that's what's going to happen. It will change in a different direction, and that'll be okay as long as it still survives, I think.
And sometimes I wonder if because I've asked the same questions, Ray, because I'm like, well, I'm only, like my vantage point only goes back so far. I mean, okay, maybe Transformers when I was a kid and the cartoons and Optimus Prime was a semi. And I'm like, but what about what people would have seen in the 1940s and the 1950s and such? And sometimes I wonder, and if the parallel is similar to music in some ways, like how different generations discover music, So back in the day when I was in broadcasting school 20 years ago, I went to Iowa Western in Council Bluffs, so other side of the Missouri River, just over from Omaha. And in downtown Omaha at the time, there was a huge record store down in the old market called Homer's, and they had other locations around Omaha. But any kind of records that you could find, CDs, cassette tapes, I mean, it was an Omaha institution, and you might go down there and you would talk to people who would say, I discover all my new music simply by being in here and browsing the record store. Mm-hmm. And then you would have another group of people that was like, well, I get my new music from there, but I also listen to the radio. I also listen to FM radio. Mm-hmm. And then like things like MySpace started to happen, and then bands would put their music players online, and then people are like, well, I'm discovering new music online. And then fast forward to today, and you probably have a number of people who are discovering new music on something like a Spotify or a YouTube. Mm-hmm. I didn't have MTV growing up, which made me an anomaly in broadcasting school, particularly a station that was an active rock station that was broadcasting regularly as core artists, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana, and all of those bands. I didn't have MTV, so I didn't have a ton of exposure to that music growing up in rural Iowa, not until I went and actually worked in radio. But there was a number of people in my generation who would have discovered music through MTV. I was still classic FM radio or AM radio for the old AM standards and big band music and things like that. So sometimes I wonder if how generations discover cars, if it's very similar to music, or if there's some kind of parallels through there, because the way somebody in the late 1960s would have experienced the Rolling Stones or the Who is far different than how somebody would have experienced them in 2024.
Carl, we got to get together one night and sit around a table and have a couple drinks and talk, because this I have thoughts on all. I got music, my influence from my older brother, who's 10 years older than me. I used to listen to his records when he wasn't around. So I go 10 years prior to what people my age listen to and still listen to. You know how I'm getting new music now? I put 5 CDs in the CD player in the garage. I put it on shuffle, and there's CDs that I know and love. But I'm hearing tracks that I never listened to before. Like, hey, what's that? Oh, wow, that's a good one. So I'm hearing like 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old music new again, because I just hadn't listened to the whole damn CD.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I'm not getting any new music because I listen to the radio, and a lot of the stuff that I listen to, I just listen to the art of radio, because I'm also an old radio
that's
guy
your gig,
back. I just listen to how they're putting together radio, top 40 radio nowadays. So the music to me is
secondary.
The music to me is secondary, and it's still one big long disappointment. So I'm not into the music, and because the way it's presented is lost. That art that I learned back in the mid 80s, gone. There's no way to intro a song. So my new music is non-existent. It's very frustrating because now I just listen to jazz.
The other thing that really makes me laugh, yesterday we were sitting in the kitchen and Fox was on. My wife's watching Fox, and I said, I can't get over watching her talk about politics. She's what? I said, Kennedy, one of the hosts on Fox 5. She was an MTV VJ in the 80s. She was one of the original VJs, and now she's doing like political. So I can never see her out of that MTV realm, and now she's doing political stuff. But so again, that happens with actors and actresses all the time. You see them out of their world, and does not compute. Mm-hmm. So it's 12. We're coming to the end, Carl. We only have a few minutes left, so we have to make our thoughts a little succinct. If we have any if you have any wrap up that you want to lay on us.
And here's the thing, when my mom listens to this show, and I love my mom has been very supportive of my career in automotive, because I've been playing with Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars since I was a kid. When I grow up, and I'm like, I want to grow up and be a car guy. She was never like, don't you think you want to get a real job? She's always been supportive of me years. And so I'm sure that my mom is listening today, and mom is always like, when I listen to you and Chris and Ray, she goes, I feel like you're just 3 buddies in a bar having a beer. And she's like, and I'm just sitting over in the table next to you guys.
I wish we were.
Ray, when you're saying that, what we need to do is to just have like a 2-hour show where it is just music and cars, and we could do a whole hour show just on music alone, and I know we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But drawing these connections and these parallels between different generations and music and cars, and trying to find the connection and things like that. Yeah. And that's why I love this show, because we go deep like this.
I'll tell you what.
It's always such a pleasure.
On Thursday night, you come on Playing in Traffic. We'll do our thing for a while. I said, stay for the after show. Unfortunately, we used to have Chassis John, our good buddy, and John and I took it to the music side because we're both very much into music, both drummers and into, we're the same age, usually a month older than me. And that kind of went away. We do it a little bit once in a while, but because we have backup man Brian, another great friend, and I asked Brian once. I said, "Dude, you got to be a bass player, right? Because he's 6'3", he's like,
yeah."
He said, I said, "You got to be the bass player." He goes, "No, I don't play the bass. I'm sorry." I'm like, "What do you play?" He goes, "I don't play anything." I'm like, damn it! I said, "You're going to be the bass player anyway." So we'll do some music and cars if you're interested on Thursday night.
And I'll get my PJs and snuggle in.
Right.
Just put the phone to my ear.
Look,
snuggle right in.
Tell me if you're awake. I'll send you the link, and you can come in. I got this. I have that power.
This is the stuff car guys think about, though. This is the stuff we think about, whether we're on the air like this, or whether we're not, or just whatever we're doing. This Haggerty, this 2024 Future of Driving survey. When all we hear is, Gen Z doesn't want to drive, or younger generation aren't into cars. And granted, some of that is true. There's documented evidence that shows that younger people are not into cars like older generations. Driving and the love of cars does tend to taper as with each generation. If you were to compare baby boomers to Gen X to millennials, there is a tapering of that interest in cars overall, but that doesn't mean it's non-existent. That's the difference, right?
I couldn't wait to start driving. I was driving a year before I had a license.
Yeah. And it's so funny because kids today have Uber, they have Lyft. Right. They just use their phone.
You know what?
Go click and a car shows up.
I'm glad you said that, because luckily I noticed both of my daughters, one's a millennial, one's a Gen Zer. They will Uber all over. They'll spend a lot of money Ubering because they're going to go out to a restaurant, to a bar.
Sure.
My younger daughter was at a friend's house this weekend, had the wife's car, and sent a text and, "Listen, I'm going to stay here tonight because I'm going to have another drink, and I was like, wow. I said, that's not my generation. Like, we got home, didn't know how we got home, didn't know where we got home. Where's the car?
And in that regard, Uber is really good. Uber is really good.
They should charge less, though.
I mean, it's safer in that regard.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin is, Chris, like you said, was it Jim who texted earlier?
Yes.
Is to Jim's point, Uber is very convenient. I use Uber when I travel for business and I go downtown in a different city and I don't have a rental car to get to meetings and business stuff. Yes, Uber is super convenient. But the other side of what Jim is saying is that you don't have freedom with an Uber. You don't have freedom to drive. You don't have freedom to pick up and go when you want to go on your schedule. And I think that's what Gen Z is really after. Gen Z are like, again, just like us. I'm working 1 million hours a week. I got 100 things going on. I need to get myself involved in something that's not work. Collector cars are for me. I don't want to think about work. I don't want to think about emails. I don't want to think about my job. I want to go out and I want to be with my collector car, whether that's working on it or whether that's driving. And so I think cars are offering that outlet for Gen Z. And I think that's what's really driving underneath. That's what's driving that gravity. That's what's driving the reason why Gen Z is gravitating towards collector cars.
Well,
good thoughts.
Right. I hope you're right. I hope that gets sustained and moves forward. Because yes, I'm like Ray. I want to see the hobby change and evolve and continue.
Always a pleasure, fellas.
Thank you again. We'll see you Thursday night. Chris, what do we say to the people out in the parking lot waiting for me?
Don't follow us home. Get that classic car on the road.
You got it. See you soon, Carl. Thank you very much for Chris Switzer, Ray Guarino, Carl Anthony, Motormouth Radio. We'll be back next week with more on 90.3 WHPC. See you, fellas. Thanks.
See you, bye.